Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of All Things Metaphysical Podcast. I'm Gail, here with my co-host Kelly.
We've
I did it
changed
again.
places. I'm Gail, no, Kelly.
I think our new name is going to be whatever.
Kelly.
I can't get it out right. But this is episode 14 of our podcast, and we're just here hanging out, talking about all things metaphysical. And when Kelly and I were talking about the podcast yesterday, what we were going to talk about, the first thing that came up, and then God only knows where we're going, because I'm still surprised by where we went last week. So we'll see where we end up going this week. We were going to spend a little time talking about how to manage your energy going into the holiday season and spending time in stores or spending time with other people, because we had a year of about being shut down. And when you're an empath, that felt really good. Now being back with other people is causing some major problems.
It is. It absolutely is. And it's so much going on. It's just we're being inundated with buy this, go here, do this. And for so many of us, we're maybe not ready to go and buy this and do that and see these people. It is far more important to take care of yourself than to go visit people you really don't feel like seeing. Or, if you're, and I know some people who I just had this discussion with earlier today. If you've been out of work, or you've been financially strapped because of the whole pandemic situation, it is not worth running your bills up to give someone something because they expect you to give them a present. And this time of year, I think I've heard it from so many people. It just seems like everyone is very overwhelmed. And I have a friend who is literally charging her groceries right now because she got into so deeply into debt. She's a waitress. And when the pandemic happened, she was out of a job. And she's been scraping things together. And then she tells me she's got a limit. She's only spending $500 on her credit cards for buying Christmas presents. What is wrong with this? And she's so down. And everyone I've talked to has been nearly energetically comatose because there's so much pressure and there's so much anger and there's been so much loss collectively that people are really struggling, whether they consciously realize it or not. But when you see someone at a grocery store who is literally leaning up against a shelf, like this, it's pretty widespread. So what do we do? How do we combat that? I mean, short of truly going out in public in a hazmat suit, what do we do? I tell people to try to stop and take a couple of deep breaths and recenter themselves. When you get home, maybe that's a really good time for a nice special cup of tea or a glass of wine or a hot bath or whatever it is that you do to relax yourself, because it really, truly is overwhelming. I was out in public today and I did not like any of it. So
I usually do two different things when I'm in public. I think breathing is always important. But I sometimes imagine that I'm covered 360 degrees in rose pink mirrors so that everything just bounces back off of me with love.
Yeah.
And then usually anything that's not for your highest good can't penetrate the color magenta. So sometimes I'll imagine myself in a magenta cloak from head to toe with a hood.
Yeah, I've done the pink, like a hamster ball, where I've walked around through, in public in a giant hamster ball. And that really does help. I know when I've explained that to people, they look at me like I have lost my last shred of, insanity, but it really does work. Give it a try
Mm-hmm.
if you're feeling that you're really overwhelmed in public. The holidays, there are so many different religions and so many different holidays going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, it's really taxing.
It's currently Hanukkah, and I
Mhm.
believe Advent started.
Yep.
And I think Hanukkah and Advent started very similarly. And I always find it interesting when the holidays intersect,
Yeah.
and what does that mean? What does that mean for us as a society? Can we all get along and things like that? So I just always think it's interesting.
Yeah. I know a lot of different people from a lot of different religions. And we often will talk on the phone or we'll do a Zoom chat or something where we'll all compare notes. And it always brings home to me how in every single religion, it is the same basics. We are all connected. We are all supposed to love and support each other. That's what it's really all about. And whoever, and I do know the story, but I'm just going to say whoever, um, developed the idea that we need to buy everybody everything. Um, that is truly, in my opinion, a capitalist curse. Did you hear that?
Mhm. What are you hearing on your end?
I just heard like a chime. It was like a bell, ding, 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 ding. But which may actually, I have to deviate a little bit really quickly here. When I was out in the dollar store a week or so ago, and of course they have all the Christmas stuff out, and this kid was doing the thing. I always do it, and I'm not a kid, so I have no excuse. Those animated things that say touch me and it rings or it says something, and this kid was touched over and over and over again. He was making these bells sound, and it was Carol of the Bells.
Mhm.
And it made me cry because it reminded me of someone that I lost
Mhm.
around Christmas. And he was an old business partner,
Mhm.
and he was Jewish. And yet every Christmas he would dress up as Santa. I would be his elf. We would go and we would give toys
Mhm.
to two different orphanages. And I always laughed because I thought that was so funny, the Jewish Santa Claus. And he never made a big deal about it. He just said it's not a religion thing. It's a right thing to do. These kids would have nobody.
Mhm.
But his thing when we would buy Christmas toys or toys for Christmas, that song, he would fall to his knees and grab his ears and go, bells, bells, bells. And it was just the funniest thing. This man was 6'6", weighed maybe 340 pounds, huge guy in a Santa suit, falling to his knees, screaming about bells. And it just, when I heard, every time I hear Carol of the Bells, it brings me right back to that moment. And for me, that's sort of bittersweet
Mhm.
because I still laugh at the vision of who he was and what he did. And the bells thing was just crazy.
So we
But
have some viewers watching us live. So if
we
you who
do.
are watching us have questions, please put them in the comments section. We will do our best to answer them. I know that when I was little, we were in Florida for Christmas and never decorated a Christmas tree. Had always wanted to. So where we were staying, there was a little restaurant, and the owners asked my parents if they would let me and my brother decorate the tree because it needed to be decorated. And I just remember thinking what fun that was. And I remember being little and asking my parents, why can't I have a Hanukkah bush, a white tree with blue lights and a frozen bagel on top? My mother kept saying that's still a Christmas tree, but I'm like, it's a Hanukkah bush. Hanukkah
Yeah.
is the festival of lights. I don't understand.
Yeah. I always um, liked the blue lights.
Hmm.
And I would insist when I was a kid that somebody put blue lights somewhere. I didn't care. They wanted the multicolored tree, fine. I don't care. But I want blue lights somewhere. And it wasn't until years and years later when I found out that I actually am half Jewish and that blue was an actual Hanukkah thing, it kind of made sense to me then. It said, whoa, I was embracing my unknown Jewish half, and I did not know. So it's funny when things happen.
I remember those discussions with my parents. I'm like, I need you to explain to me why we can't put lights on our house, because Hanukkah is the festival of lights. Christmas is not the festival of lights. This does not make any sense.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
All right, so we got a comment. It says, how crazy does it make you when you tell people things they should know and they don't listen to your intuition? I want to yell out, hello, did you forget who you were talking to?
Eventually, it will not make you crazy at all. You will just sort of chuckle to yourself. Yeah. But I do remember when it did make me very crazy. Yeah.
Well, it's like people come to you all the time for advice and suggestions and things like that. They do to me anyway. And then I answer their questions. They're like, no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
I'm like, then why are you asking me? I believe my name is the no nonsense intuitive, so I'm going to give it to you straight.
Yep.
Why are you then saying, no, that's not right?
Yeah. It can be almost infuriating if you let it, especially when it's your kid and you're telling them something and they ignore you, and then what you were afraid of happening happens, and you're like, yep. But these days I just kind of chuckle at it. And it's like, yeah, okay.
Okay, well, like 10 minutes from now when that happens, don't come back to me and say, you should have been more forceful about it.
Right. Yep. Why didn't you make me listen to you? That my daughter used to say that. Why didn't you make me listen to you? Like, yeah, huh? You have kids now. How's that working out?
Yep, you can chalk it up to free will.
Yep, absolutely.
The free will planet. We all live on it. So again, multiple paths to get where we're going. Our free will determines which way we're going to get there.
Yeah. Some of us take the scenic route.
You know, I don't normally, I know we've talked about it before, but every now and then out of the corner of my eye, I'm seeing the orbs over my head. I haven't been paying attention. I just wonder, like, when you guys watch these back, are you guys seeing the orbs that go on around us while we're videotaping it? I mean, I know they're still there in the videotape, so just think it's interesting.
I had an interesting thing the other day. I did a video reading. I normally don't do video readings because, quite frankly, I am afraid of what somebody might see behind me. But I did one, and she told me that I had shadows moving behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, are they shadows? And she said, no, that one's an angel. And when she played it back, you could see what looked like wings right behind me. And I thought that was really interesting because usually that does not happen. But I do believe it was because of the nature of the reading that I was doing
and what the person you were reading needed to see.
Right. Exactly. And she did see exactly what she needed to see. So it worked out. But I did think it was very interesting.
Yeah. Fun stuff. The person said, yes, when you watch the videos back, you can still see the orbs. There was one floating by right now. So it's just interesting. I used to have a background on when I did the readings, and then you couldn't see the orbs. So everyone's like, we want to see the orbs. So no background.
This background is actually my meditation focus. I walk down that path. But yeah, someone asked me.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, somebody asked me if that was a background for Zoom. And I said, no, it's actually just a pretty picture I put on my wall. And I just wander down that path when I get stressed.
Yeah. I hung one of my actual mandalas up so that we could see that. I figured I, should at least promote myself a little bit.
Yes. You should promote yourself a lot bit.
So what other things would we like to talk about this evening? If you're watching and you have any questions, please feel free to ask us. We will like I said, do our best. So far, we haven't gotten anything that's really stumped us.
No,
There
no.
will be a day probably where someone will just ask a question just to stump us. But so,
I look forward to that day. Yeah. One of the things, we started out talking about holidays and kind of got away from it, but one of the things that I have noticed lately, no matter if it's online or on TV or, whatever it is, social media particularly, is all of the anger
mhm.
that people are still fueling. And it seems like the more I distance myself from certain people who are angry, the more they seek me out. And that's a little weird.
Okay, I will answer your question in a second, viewer, but I wanted to just, one of the channeled messages that I got once was think about cell phones for a minute. Think about how many people are yelling on cell phones. Okay, so they're yelling, it's getting beamed to outer space to a satellite, and then it's getting beamed back to us to the other person.
Right,
So just think about all that anger that's getting put back at us all the time because of what
right,
we're putting out there.
right.
So the question that the viewer has is, can you talk about the void?
As it regards to what?
Well, even what is like the black void? Like a lot of people you'll hear in the metaphysical community talk about when they're really stressed or whatever, their spirit team will take them to the void to kind of relax or calm down or de-stimulate them, so to speak.
In my experience, that's not necessarily a black void,
Mhm,
but it depends on what you're de-stressing from.
mhm,
I have, I went through a very, very, very ugly, tumultuous divorce.
mhm,
And during that time, I was trying to deal with a lot of anger. It's a time where you want to feel so you can heal, but
mhm,
you don't want to put that back out so it comes back to you.
mhm,
And that's where I would spend a great deal of time in meditation. It's just in that void where
mhm,
nothing is going on. And what happened to me is my spirit animal came and got me and said, "We have work to do. You cannot do this any longer."
mhm,
And I've talked to a number of people who've had that same experience. And it's interesting because we each have a different spirit animal. And in terms of shamanism, which is primarily what I do, um, it's it's a secret. You're not supposed to tell anyone else what your spirit animal is. And in actuality, most of those spirit animals associated with shamanism are not really animals,
mhm,
sort of a composite of different animals. But they will come and get all of us have those. And when you're in that void, whether because you put yourself there, sometimes one of our guides will put us there
mhm,
because we need to chill for a
mhm,
while. Um, you'll have an animal or a being that will assign themselves to you.
mhm,
It's not a bad thing. People think when they think they're stuck there, and
mhm.
you're not stuck there. You just need to you put yourself there, you can bring yourself back out. If a guide put you there, you can still bring yourself back out. It is not a permanent thing. Um,
So our
yeah,
viewers said the first time that they were introduced to their celestial being and they needed to meet their celestial being in the void.
yeah,
For me, I find the void, I just float in it. It's like kind of like a deprivation tank, and it calms me down. And then I always feel better when I come back because sometimes there's so much going on. It just kind of shuts everything out for me from a little bit. And usually my guides put me there, or I'll put myself there too sometimes if I need to go into no time.
yeah.
So, but I find it very relaxing and serene. And
It
our viewer,
is.
she found it comforting.
Yeah. People, she specifically asked about a black void, but there is a white void. You can have a pink void, you can have a blue void, you can have whatever color void you want. And what happens, a lot of the times when I put myself there, it may start out one color and then it changes to a different color. And there's a lot going on with different colors that will heal you in different ways.
That's really interesting that you see that, because whenever I go to the void, I see it like floating in space and I'm just hanging out with the cosmos and it's always black. It has never changed colors.
It changes for me, and they will beam me in different pieces of it. But I think a lot of that is training in shamanic journeying, because that's what you do anyway, is go to different dimensions and different worlds. And my void can be whatever color I need it to be.
So your void shape shifts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we also had another question from another viewer that says, I'm seeing lights as I wake up in the morning, not really any lights coming into the room. Today was over my head. Welcome to your spirit team and angels.
Yeah, they're talking to you. Yeah.
You must be ready to start to see them. So they're starting to come in as flashing lights usually.
Yeah, I'll see a flash of light or orbs, different colored orbs. Usually, and you'll get to this point, listener, you will. Most people do. When you get to the point where you're ready to see them, they usually announce their presence in some way. I hear bells. Other people see flashes. I have one person that swears he hears a car horn. Okay, yeah. Like, I'm not going to argue with you, but when you start hearing things, they usually warn you or try to.
I have an interesting question because it just popped in while we're doing our podcast, and it's actually happening while we're doing this. So what's your take on remote viewing? Because literally someone just came in and was watching what we were doing.
Really? I've done remote viewing. Sometimes you have to be really careful. I have seen some things that I wasn't meant really to see. But, yeah, I mean, governments around the world have been working with it for years. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that people are doing it.
I just thought it was interesting that it happened during our show today. Like someone's head popped in for a brief minute and like, oh.
Yep. I've had more bi-location things than really remote viewing. And what has happened several times, I have had people swear they've seen me someplace that was thousands of miles away. A lot of the time, if someone I love has been in an accident or is in the hospital, or is trapped in a cave because their rope fell down, seriously, that happened, they will swear they see me. And, I've apparently talked to them while they see me, and I'm not there. I'm still home. And I'm not always asleep, which is what I've been told is unusual. If you're sleeping, it's easier. But I apparently do this while I'm wide awake too.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. I hadn't heard it's while you're sleeping. I've always been very conscious, whether meditating, and when I was little, I used to do it all the time, not aware that I was doing it. But, so that's really interesting.
Yeah, when I was little, I flew, and I told everyone I flew. My youngest grandson ended up on top of a chest of drawers that was very high, and he was very tiny. And my daughter said, "How'd you get there?" And he goes, "I flew." And she said, "You are your grandmother's grandchild." But our concept of reality, or most people's concept of reality, isn't necessarily real. And there are so many more things that most people never see. And for a very long time, I thought there was something wrong with me
Hmm.
because I could see things that they couldn't see. And I could have interactions with beings that nobody else believed existed. And
Hmm.
now I just kind of feel sorry for everybody else. It's sort of evolved.
Yeah.
I've gotten older. Of course, I no longer care what anyone thinks. So that's a big part of it.
So keep your questions coming because you guys are asking great questions. So, and we're happy to answer and talk about anything and everything metaphysical related. So, if there's any other questions that you guys have tonight, please feel free to ask them. And again, you can always contact Kelly or I in between shows if there's something that you want us to talk about as well. We're always happy to help people on their journeys. I guess we're both kind of guides.
Yeah. I've been an unwilling guide for a very long time.
Well, we all know I've been a reluctant mystic, so
It's when when people come to you
Mhm.
over and over and over, and when I lived in the city, of course, it was much more frequent. But
Mhm.
even I live in the middle of nowhere. If I leave my house, I guarantee you somebody will tell me their life story.
Mhm.
And it's always been that way. And I have had recently a kid came up to me in the dollar store I was talking about earlier and said, "Hi, I don't know why I need to tell you this, but do you know that there's an angel following you around?" And I went, "Yes, yes, I do. How do you see this?" But that kind of stuff just happens to me. And that was in the dollar store. And I guess through the years, I've just gotten used to it.
Mhm.
For a long time, I would practically run away from people that would say such a thing. And now I'm like, bring it on. I don't care.
I love little kids, like, pre-verbal little kids, so probably between 0 and 1.
Yeah,
When you have a lot of gifts and abilities, they just stare at you over your head because they can see everything that's going on, and the parents are like, "What are they looking at? And why are they so transfixed by you?" And I said, "Well, I know what's going on over my head, so I get it."
yeah, yeah. I was on a flight one time and there was a baby in front of me
Mhm.
and he kept trying to look between the seats and mom's trying to corral him and he's trying to look between the seats and he would look between the seats and he would wave and then he would go back and then he would wave. And when he got fussy one time and when she went to move him, he looked over her shoulder at me and he looked at me and he smiled and he clapped his hands. And she was, "What are you doing?" And finally she looked around and saw me and she went, "My son is flirting with you and he's 8 months old." And it was so cute because he wanted to be fussy, but he wanted to see what was going on behind him at the same time. That
Mhm.
was my,
Maybe that's why he was fussy because she wasn't letting him
yeah,
see the show that was going on.
yeah. And that hands down, that is my favorite flight with an infant or a baby.
So one of the comments from one of our viewers is saying that we're too funny today.
Okay, I'll take it.
And one of the viewers just said, never thought about children being able to see things also. I know when I'm in a restaurant, I always have children stare at me.
Yep,
That and I have
yep,
pets stare at me. Dogs will just like stop and cock their head a little bit and just stare. And the owner's like, what is, going on?
yep.
I'm like, I know,
Yeah.
I know.
It's yeah, animals do that with me too. I used to joke about it being my animal magnetism,
Uh-huh.
but there was a dog park where I used to take my dogs when I lived in the city.
Hmm.
And there was this dog, and he would always be there first thing in the morning when usually nobody else was around. And the owner would tell me he didn't like anyone. He was okay with other dogs, but he didn't like people. And we're talking, and the dog comes around and sits beside me, and he's like leaning into my legs. And I'm like, "Oh, this dog." He's like, "That never happens." Well, does with me.
Welcome to my world. It's an everyday occurrence.
Yep. It
Maybe it
is.
doesn't happen in your reality, but it happens all the time in mine.
Yep.
So, just interesting.
She mentioned fish in tanks coming up to
Uh-huh.
her. I went to Monterey Bay Aquarium and everything, even the turtles, they were watching me. And I had people very upset. I had a kid tell me to leave so he could see the fish.
Well, he just had to follow you. He would have seen all the fish.
Like, I'm going over here. Come here, you know. But yeah, that's been my life. It just, you know, birds bring me things. I have a flock of ravens here locally that will habitually fly over me and drop a shiny rock or something. It's just I used to say it was a curse, but now I realize it's part of the magic.
Hmm.
And I don't care if it scares people anymore. Like, you know, whatever. It's a bird. What do you want? You know?
I have a very funny story about a bird. I like to drive fast and sometimes over the speed limit. And
No.
I was on a road trip. This was like way in the beginning of my gifts, and I didn't really realize what was happening at the time. But so all of a sudden, this bird lands in the middle of my lane, like 200 feet in front of me. So, like, I have to jam on my brakes and slow down. And then, right after I drove past where the bird had landed, there was a police car.
Uh-huh.
I would have got pulled over with a ticket.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah,
thank you.
I've had animals do that to me too. I have a tendency of driving way faster than I should
Mm.
most of the time. Yeah,
Yeah, my bird guide.
bird guide.
And we've talked about, I guess we need to go there now. So we talked about multidimensional beings before. But like when I used to take a lot of classes and I'd be so tired because like I was working full time and I wouldn't leave the class till like 11 and I lived an hour and a half away.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure the multidimensional beings drove my car home, like the scene from Men in Black with the autopilot.
Yep.
Because I remember sitting in the driver's seat, but I couldn't tell you how I got from point A to point B.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had those experiences back when I used to drive from San Francisco to Texas a lot, way too much.
Mhm.
I would, it was a 24-hour drive if you went straight through, which I never did. But
Mhm.
I would always seem to make it in like 18 and a half hours, even stopping, and I'd have no idea. I must have been flying, but I don't think I was driving at all. It was just amazing.
It's just so funny when that stuff happens. And there's always beings around us helping us if we're open to the experience. And you need to ask for their help. They can't intervene unless we're in harm's way. So if you want them to start being around more, you actually have to ask them to be.
Yeah, I was in a really, really horrible car accident right after my daughter was born. She was like 3 weeks old,
Mhm.
and I should have slid off the cliff, and I didn't. The car stopped. It was spinning, it was going to the cliff, and it stopped 4 feet short.
Well, I
And
wonder. I wonder if it really stopped. Did you read any of Neil Donald Walsh's
yeah,
Conversations with God about how sometimes you come back and they put you back in right before it happens, and then they change the outcome?
yep,
Because I know I had one of those experiences at 17. I was on an icy road and a semi stopped this far from hitting me. I'm like, there's no way on ice that a semi stopped that
right.
close
Yeah,
to.
and this was icy. It was actually a sleet storm. In Texas, we have very few
Mhm.
snowy days, but it was sleeting and the roads were very icy. And I've always wondered about that. I should
Yeah,
have been
put you
gone.
back right before it happened.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it was certainly interesting.
Mhm. Those are some interesting experiences too, and we can certainly dive into those too if people have questions about those. You know, I've had two of those car weird, and yeah, I think most of us have. It's just we tend to not really think about what really happened because it freaks us out too much. So we're just like, thank God and let's just move on. But when you look at it in retrospect, there's no way I should have survived this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's another instance of what we think is reality is wrong. It just, things happen, and the more open you are to having their help, the more they'll help you.
Yeah, this is true. I oftentimes think about life like a Star Trek movie, and we're all on a holodeck creating it. And so, like, as a humanity, what are we actually creating on this holodeck? And if we're creating it, can we shift it and change the paradigm? And I think that's where people get stuck, thinking this is how it is. I'm like, this isn't how it has to be, though.
Right.
If there's enough of us shifting the paradigm, it'll shift. One of our viewers said, and then walk away with my really none at all.
Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, it's just really interesting talking about all those things and talking about, because when we're in it, we just move past it and we don't think about it. But then years later, you think about it and it's like, how did I survive that? Like sometimes after you have an awakening, you're like, oh, wait, this means so much more than that. And it's like, then you get freaked out by it. And then what does it really mean? And what are you supposed to take away from it? And what was and what didn't you do? Or what do you need to do? And it just opens the floodgate to lots of questions.
I think sometimes as we go on, we learn different things from the same incidents. And that's something else that a lot of teachers don't talk about. They talk about learn your lessons, but they don't tell people that once you've learned those lessons, you're going to end up going deeper into the lessons you thought you learned. And I think that's why so many people give up, because they think, well, I've already done this. Why am I rehashing this? Well, because you've progressed. Congratulations. Now you have to go a deeper level.
I think about it as most people think of it like a maze. I think about it as a labyrinth.
Yeah.
That there's multiple layers and you go up and down. And, one of the things when I was more in a therapy role that I always used to educate all my clients on that I worked with was Zen philosophy.
Yeah.
And that the positive and the negative outcome happen simultaneously in any situation. And we pick which direction we're going to go. Because how many times in your life, if you had something happen and you thought it was the worst thing that could ever happen to you, 3 years later, you look back on it and you said, oh my God, thank God I went through that because it got me here. So the event didn't change. The same series of facts happen. What happened is your perspective about the event changed. And that's where the learning and the movement comes in, is our shifts in perspective that happen. What do you think about that?
I think that's probably very true. I know there were things that I went through decades ago. Recently, I don't know what they're doing to me. I've been in angel school at night, and I'm not sleeping. And, I'm like sitting at a desk listening. I'm being taught. And they're showing me things that I thought I healed a long time ago. And now I look back and I go, well, yeah, my life would have gone an entirely different direction. I would be somebody entirely different. And then they show me that I am somebody entirely different in a parallel universe. And I'm like, all right, whoa. But the deeper you go, the deeper you go. And that's just the way it works. I think we are taught different lessons when we're ready to learn them, but it probably goes back to a different, it can go back to the same event. I thought it was very interesting when I was a kid. All I wanted to do was ride a horse. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to ride my horse around the world and save all the animals that I could save. That was my goal in life. And when the horse was sold, I thought my life was over. I really did. And it was so traumatizing. And I have seen where my life would have gone had I gone down that route. And I would be totally different. And I don't think I would be as me as I am now. So while my guides tell me all the time I would be much further along if I hadn't insisted on taking the scenic route, I think we take the scenic route because there are things that we need to learn that we maybe wouldn't learn if we'd gone down a straighter path, at least for me.
I was trained as an outward bound instructor, which people find is funny because I'm allergic to a lot of things outside. But one of the places I worked decided I needed to be trained in that. So I would lead groups on it in the behavioral health hospital I worked in. And it always fascinated me. We would give the instructions, and then they would get to a certain point in the task. They would make a mistake, and then they would start over, but they would do exactly the same thing. So they would make the same mistake. It's like, how many times do you have to do the same thing or be smacked by the proverbial 2x4 before you go, wait, if I do this the exact same way, I'm going to have the exact same outcome, which is the definition of insanity. You know, so it's up to us, though, as human beings, how long we want to continue to do that for.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I still personally think there's something to be said for the scenic route. You know, do different things. I have recreated my life so many times in this life. You know, at one time I was a banker, you know, and I've been an A&R rep in the music industry. And, you know, I've been a songwriter, and I've been a farmer, and, you know, so it seems like there are many of us. And the more I talk to different people, the more I realize I'm not so unique. There are a lot of us that went through, let me try this. Well, let me try that. Well, that seems interesting. I'll do that for a while. And it seems like people who get to a certain point kind of decide to dabble in a little bit of everything. When I was 2, I told my grandmother this would be my last time on this planet. And then I was from the Pleiades. And she said, what's that? But throughout my life, I've been told by guides, you know, anything you want to do in a human body, do it now. So I think that's why I've done a lot of everything. But in talking with other people who are like-minded, I find that most of us have done that. You know, it's just different things that you find interesting.
Yeah, so a question, we'll end with this question because we're kind of getting to that time boundary that we've been kind of holding is, do you think what you dabble may have something to do with past lives?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That is the only possible explanation for me wanting to learn to make a sword. Yeah, absolutely.
I know that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's sort of, I'm tying up all the loose ends from past lives. That's what it feels like.
You know, I remember when I first kind of started down the metaphysical path, I probably read every metaphysical or a huge cross section of metaphysical books. And I remember, like, when I was reading about the Pleiadians, and which was my favorite thing to read about. Imagine that.
Yeah, go.
And I'm just like, but I already know all this stuff. And sometimes when you are starting on a path and you feel like you already know it, it's because you did it in a past life and you're just remembering it in this lifetime. We don't really learn things, we remember things.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's why for some people things come super easy because it's very fresh and it's really right there. So it's just interesting.
It is interesting. Yep.
All right. So with that, we will end this podcast for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the amazing questions today.
Yes.
Again, if you guys have questions between shows, reach out to Kelly and myself. You can Our contact information is on the YouTube channel, I believe, for you to reach out to us. Have a great night, and we will see you guys all again. And then my orb approved. It just went
Yes.
straight through me.
Yes, this podcast is orb approved.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Bye.